Collins insisted she remove the jacket immediately. His voice grew louder. Others gathered, filming on their phones. Accusations flew. Stolen valor. Show us your ID. Elaine didn't flinch. She didn't argue. Calmly, she set down the crate, unzipped her faded jacket, and rolled up her left sleeve. Silence fell. Etched into her scarred skin was a tattoo, a combat dagger piercing a torn American flag, and beneath it the code Echo 19, a designation only 2 soldiers ever wore. One had died in 2018. The other now stood before them. A hush swept the crowd. A colonel stepped forward, voice low with awe. There were only 2 people authorized that mark, the unit commander and the medic. Elaine lifted her chin. Staff Sergeant Elaine Carter, Echo 19 Medical Support, presumed KIA, March 15th, 2008. And just like that, the woman who'd blended into the shadows became the living proof that sometimes the quietest people carry the heaviest stories and the deepest scars. No one expected a scene like this on a crisp Saturday morning at Fort Bragg, as volunteers bustled around for a civilian military drill. A single voice sliced through the chatter. "Ma'am, that's not a regulation jacket. You're not authorized to wear it." The words came from Lieutenant Andrew Collins, all of 25, fresh out of OCS and burning with zeal for rules. He'd zeroed in on a woman carrying a heavy crate across the training grounds, a woman he assumed was just a civilian. Her name was Elaine Carter, 43 years old. Petite, hair pulled back in a severe bun. For 3 years, she'd worked in logistics at the base, ordering medical supplies, maintaining equipment inventories. Quiet, invisible. Nobody ever questioned who she was. Most thought she was a contractor who liked military surplus. March 15th, 2008. A remote forward supply depot known only by its coordinates. Codename Echo 19. It wasn't supposed to exist. 7 soldiers maintained it, stockpiling ammunition, repairing weapons, delivering med kits to special operations units operating in deep hostile territory. Elaine was the unit's medic. 29 years old, 5 years in, sharp under fire, quiet off duty. That morning, a security leak gave up their position. The attack came just after dawn. Mortars, small arms, overwhelming numbers. In the chaos, 6 soldiers died within minutes. Only Elaine remained, and 7 wounded commandos who couldn't walk. She had no radio, no backup, and no chance. So, she fought alone. For 3 hours, she moved between shattered windows with a rifle and a sidearm, defending the makeshift medical bay with everything she had. When her ammo ran out, she made a decision no manual ever covered. She wired the fuel depot over 10,000 gallons of jet fuel to explode, bought herself 2 minutes, and carried the wounded one by one to the only surviving vehicle. The blast could be seen from 15 miles away. Intel later assumed no one made it out, but Elaine did. Severely burned, lungs scarred, hearing damaged. She vanished into a military hospital under an alias. The mission was buried classified and forgotten. She declined medals. declined retirement. She chose instead to serve in silence in logistics, where no one asked questions, until one day, a young officer questioned her jacket and uncovered the quiet survivor who'd once saved 7 lives and burned herself into history. She moved through the halls of Fort Branson's logistics hub like a shadow, small in stature, hair pulled back tight, always in a faded army jacket with no insignia, no name tag. To most, she was just another civilian contractor, the quiet woman who kept shelves stocked, who handled supply manifests, who never spoke about her past. But every morning, Elaine arrived early. She checked inventory reports, organized medical shipments, made sure spare parts were exactly where they needed to be. It was meticulous, invisible work, the kind that kept an entire military base running smoothly without anyone stopping to think who was behind it. Nobody knew she'd once held the rank of staff sergeant, or that she'd survived a hellish siege in a place the army officially denied ever existed. Her name wasn't on plaques. No medals hung above her desk. She wore no ribbons, no rank by choice. People whispered guesses. Some figured she'd served in the military. Others thought she just liked the surplus jacket. Even those who worked beside her for years didn't know the truth. Elaine didn't correct them. She'd chosen silence, because speaking meant reopening wounds she'd stitched shut. It meant dragging ghosts into daylight. She believed the past belonged to the fallen, and she carried it quietly for them, until one Saturday, a young lieutenant demanded she remove her jacket, accusing her of stolen valor. And in that moment, the woman no one noticed became the woman no one would ever forget, because beneath that jacket was a scarred tattoo telling a story of sacrifice, survival, and a promise to keep serving, even if nobody ever knew her name. The crisp air of Saturday morning cut through the base. As Elaine Carter moved silently across the training grounds, a steel crate in her arms. She wore a faded military jacket, no insignia, no name tag, just the weary color of wars fought and secrets kept. It should have been an ordinary day, until Lieutenant Peter Collins, young and righteous, had caught sight of her. His voice sliced the silence. Mamamant Sudush Spama. That jacket's unauthorized. Remove it immediately. Elaine didn't speak. She stood there, a slender figure dwarfed by concrete and steel, while soldiers gathered, curious eyes sharpening into suspicion. Sergeant First Class Ramirez joined in, his laughter harsh. Where'd you buy that, lady? A surplus store. The accusations multiplied. Louder, crueler. Each word a blade. Stolen valor. Fraud. Imposter. Still, Elaine said nothing. Her silence was not fear, it was a silence forged in fire. Lieutenant Collins barked. Remove the jacket. That's a direct order. Elaine slowly lowered the crate, fingers trembling not with fear, but memory. She unzipped her jacket and let it fall. Underneath, she wore a plain olive shirt, but then she rolled up her left sleeve, and time seemed to fracture. There on her bicep, half burned into scarred flesh, was a tattoo. A dagger plunged through a torn American flag. Beneath it, the code D-17 in military stenciling. The ink was scorched, marred by fire. like a relic dragged from hell itself. The crowd fell deathly silent. Radios crackled. Wind whispered through the trees like ghosts. Colonel Laura Hayes stepped forward, her voice low. Only 2 people ever wore that mark. One died in Lang Sector. The other, Elaine, raised her chin, eyes glinting. Staff Sergeant Elaine Carter. Delta 17 Medical Support. Presumed KIA. March 15th. 2018. The men who'd accused her felt suddenly small. Because sometimes heroes don't shout their stories, they carry them carved in skin and in silence deeper than any grave. When the truth finally surfaced, silence swept the room. Lieutenant Collins, the young officer so quick to accuse, found Staff Sergeant Elaine Carter alone in the warehouse later that night. His voice trembled. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I thought you were wearing something you hadn't earned. I was wrong. I'm so sorry." Elaine looked at him for a long moment, the harsh lights glinting off the scarred tattoo on her arm. "You were doing your job, Lieutenant," she said quietly. "Good soldiers question what doesn't look right. But remember, sometimes the quietest people carry the heaviest stories." Michael swallowed hard, unable to meet her eyes. "But you're a hero." Elaine shook her head slowly. "No. And I'm become a survivor. Heroes don't come home alone." Final message. Some heroes don't want medals or their names in history books. They just want to keep serving in silence so the names of the fallen are never forgotten. Elaine Carter wore her burn tattoo not for glory, but as a promise kept, because true courage doesn't always stand in the spotlight. Sometimes it works in a dusty warehouse, rolling up a sleeve, so the world remembers those who never came home.